Welcome back. It's episode 2 of 5am Chats, and today I am joined by my good friend Nina Ruberry. Now, Nina and I met through work, so what better subject to talk about than the juggle of work and motherhood? You may recognise Nina from her Instagram page, Nina Home and Garden, where she is currently renovating her gorgeous Cotswolds house. But for today, we're talking all about how we juggle the school runs, the school emails, the nursery drop-offs, and all the other things that motherhood throws at you with being a working parent. So grab yourself a cup of tea and let's get into it. Hello and welcome to episode 2 of 5am Chats, and today I am joined by my good friend Nina, who I met through work. So what better subject to talk about today than the juggle of work and motherhood. So hi Nina, how are you?
Hi, Laura. Yeah, good, thank you.
Good.
We sort of came together at work, so it's interesting. We talk a lot about things like this all the time anyway, don't we? So,
Yeah, exactly. And I think, when we met, the first thing that really struck for us was just how many things we have in common. So not only do we do the same job, but we're both creating content online as well. You have your account, Nina Home and Garden, where you're covering your gorgeous renovation at the moment and all of your lovely styling tips. And then we also both have 2 children the exact same age. So I've
yeah,
got 2 girls, 6 and 3. You've got 2 boys the same age. So yeah, loads and loads in common. So that's been, I guess, really nice for us having each other in the workplace to talk to and understand
definitely.
how each other's juggling the day to day of life and
Yeah,
working being
it's
mums.
so good to have someone to talk to that kind of understands your world and going through the same, highs and lows, all those sort of things. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's been good to have each other to talk to.
So, just a caveat, today we are talking around work and motherhood, but obviously, Nina and I both work in a 9 to 5 office job. This is our experience, and we're going to be speaking about our own scenario that we're in at the moment. We totally understand that so many people have shift work, all sorts of different setups when it comes to work, and we are very lucky in that we do get to work from home some days, and we have quite flexible jobs in that sense, but then we do have days when we go into the office, and just sort of this is our perspective, I guess, and this is what our experience has been so far. So, jumping into the first question, what have you come up against being a working mum?
So I think for me, so I've obviously had mat leave twice now because I've got 2 little boys. So one is 6, almost 7, and one is just turned 4. So for me, I think it's a real, like, I think just in general, just having a baby is huge. And it's like, I guess without being negative, but it's amazing. But at the time, your life changes so much. It is a bit like just being like hit with a oh my God, this has turned my world upside down in a very different way to how you worked and were as a person before you had like this little person to look after. So it's almost the same, I feel like, when you return to work, which I didn't know that was going to be like that. And again, not in a negative way, but it's almost I had my mat leave year with my first baby. I had a lovely time, obviously, and all the ups and downs of like being a mum in that time. Obviously, there's so many things I could talk about there, but then it was kind of like that, I guess, feeling a bit nervous about going back and knowing, am I gonna be able to be how I was before, in terms of just like I wasn't on, my laptop for like a year. I was just going to baby yoga and like just hanging out at home, so it was a weird kind of in my head. I was like, am I going to be able to do this? And then actually when it happens, I remember dropping him off on his first day and sort of saying goodbye and just feeling like crying, because obviously you're not used to even that separation because you're with them so much. So I think for me, it's like that kind of like new routine that I didn't even think I would even have to think about, but that new routine of like getting him up and out of the house on time so that I could drop him at preschool or nursery and then actually then get to my job, because actually back then that was pre-COVID, so I was in every day in the office, which for me at the time was an hour commute then in my car. So there was a lot I had to sort of fit in and figure in terms of real tight timings. And then obviously get to work and no one realizes you've just done all of that stuff for
Yeah.
hours before. And then you're like, oh, okay, I'm in work mode now. And now I have to do my job. And like, people don't understand any of that. And it doesn't matter. They don't necessarily need to, but it's just like that shift of like, this is now my new routine of life and this is how it works. And equally, like the picking up, you wouldn't, before having a baby, I could just be in the office till late. If things ran over, like, didn't really matter. Whereas obviously then I would be like, no, I have to, got my hour commute. I've got to drive home to make sure I'm back in time. What if there's an accident on the motorways? You have to allow extra. So there's all these different things that you're having to think about and plan and kind of really work into your life, which you didn't have to do before. So a bit like having a baby, but in that different stage. That's how I kind of saw it.
Yeah, I think you just get into the groove of it, don't you? And then you start you just get on with things really quickly in terms of the routine after a while. But I think that point you raised around just having to like leave on time, having to stick to timescales is probably the one thing that I found was the biggest shift for me as well, because there would be times when you perhaps were in the middle of something at work, but you had to leave. I
Yeah.
had to leave at 5 o'clock every day for pickup. Like there was no flexibility there. Like I was strictly within those hours of working, but tried my best while I was at work to make sure that I was focusing fully and getting as much done as possible. And I think that's one thing that being a working mum really teaches you is how much you can get done when you don't procrastinate. You just
Oh
literally
my God.
time box
100%.
things. So you have to make sure you get things done on time. Otherwise the whole day can just fall away from you. And it's just very different in that sense, isn't it? That you just have to stick to, right, I'm at work
Yeah.
now and I'm going to do this, and this, get everything I need to get done, and then get home and do everything I need to do at
Oh
home.
God. It continues. It's like that's the thing with your working day as a mum, and the same for if you were at home with them. But it's just the middle bit is filled with different things that you'd be doing if you were at home with the kids. But in the sense that then we're filling the middle bit with all the work bits because we're not looking after the kids. So it's kind of like a similar sort of structure where being a mum in general, your day starts at like 5 a.m. potentially, and then continues all the way through to if you're prepping for the night before for things till really late. And it's it's full on. And that's why I think one of the phrases I always use, like I don't know how it just kind of just come about, and I just feel like I often say it, is every second matters.
Yeah.
I just feel like I've always been in a rush anyway. I think in my life I'm always like rushing about, but being a mum I'm even more so, and I'm always like every second counts, because it's just like if I can maximize all the minutes, then hopefully things will kind of fall into place, and equally I'll hopefully be able to get that cup of tea at some point and a bit of rest time.
There's that
But
saying, isn't there, about you've got the same amount of hours in the day as Beyonce. I think they should change that to you've got the same amount of hours in a day as a mum, because
yeah.
we do so much more. I'm sure she has way more help than we do. We do everything.
Yeah, so efficient. It's unreal, like as a
Yeah.
mum, I think, and equally though, like it might be being like really efficient, but also I do fail a lot. Like there'll be days where I just think, oh, do you know what? I'm just too tired to prep that lunch box or something. And then on the next day, I'm kind of kicking myself because I'm like, oh God, it's really stressful now because I'm trying to do it in the morning whilst doing all the other things you have to do for them. So yeah, it's like all best ideas, like you hope that you're going to do. And also I just think be kind to yourself when you work, because for me definitely with doing it twice now, I think it wasn't really until about that sort of 10-12 months of being back at work that I actually felt I was maybe not working exactly as I did before, because obviously everything had changed, but in the sense that I felt like I was like productively like as good in my job as I was before. But obviously that takes time, so don't sort of put that expectation on you to think you're going to be suddenly just exactly as you were before as soon as you return, because it's just not realistic. And equally, I think that's not a bad thing from an employee's perspective either, because there's lots of things that you have to transition, but like we just said, you're going to be more efficient in general probably because
Yeah,
you are very, very kind of doing a lot, and you've got that new skill of full on multitasking and time management to
there's
the
definitely
ultimate degree.
yeah, there's definitely a kind of fog there, isn't there, when you start back, that you sort of feel like you've been in this whole mum mode for so long, and then you move back into work mode. Your brain has to take some time to adjust, and also you're really tired. Like for me, going back to work at 10 months and with a 10-month-old, with a 1-year-old, I was still up half the night. I was still getting very little sleep. So then trying to focus throughout the day as well, you are a bit like, whoa, what's going on? So yeah, being kind to yourself is definitely a very
Yeah,
important thing.
I was the same as you. My second just didn't sleep, so I'd quite often, be in work, or whether it was working from home or being in the office, and I'd just be thinking, God, no one realizes that I've been up like all night, like constantly trying to get him back to sleep, and all these things that you did on maternity leave. And it was hard then, but now it's a little bit even harder because you've got to actually be in a meeting and talk and do your work. So
Yeah,
yeah. So I was very relieved when eventually he did start sleeping through, but you kind of just become used to, being knackered really.
yeah. So that leads us on to our next question. I feel so guilty for leaving my baby to go to work. Does that get easier?
So so the guilt thing, I think never will go away. I think even until maybe they've left home, but then we'll probably all be feeling guilty that we didn't do this or we didn't do that. I think the mum guilt's just a natural thing that makes us, we love them so much. So maybe that's probably why we're constantly being guilty about everything. But from a work perspective, I just think the way that I've been trying to like help myself manage it is things like just trying to be almost prioritizing my time, in the sense that, like, for instance, when I'm doing the morning, like making them breakfast, getting them ready for school and preschool, nursery, whatever it is, and then dropping them off, like that's those few hours of like I am dedicated to that. I won't be on my phone doing emails. I won't be doing anything work related. It is like that is it. But then equally, then when I get home, if I'm working from home from the school run, or I've then commuted to work, like as soon as I'm in work, that's when I'm in work mode, because obviously they are then hopefully at school or preschool and having fun and happy. And then I can then use, like we just were saying, like that efficiency of time, like everything matters, just to try and focus on my work. So I think it's like, that's how I don't think I've planned it that way. It's just kind of how it's worked. And then now I think looking at it, that's probably what works for me, is just kind of trying to like really segment my time for what I'm focusing on. But obviously there'll be times when things collide and you're not perfectly like focused on one or the other. But I really try to keep that a minimum, and in the sense of like I really don't like answer emails in the evenings, like on purpose, because I think if people see me responding to an email at 9 o'clock at night, then actually that sets the tone that actually it's okay to email then. And but again, like between 6 and 8 I'll be doing bedtime, and that is our time, and it's important that that isn't disturbed. And I think if you want to do work later, or if you have to, because sometimes you just do, I tend to kind of do it, but I won't necessarily send the email till the morning. Like you might do all the prep or things, but almost to set that expectation with work, with what your time is. But from me mentally as well, it just helps me like keep things separate.
Yeah, definitely.
But you know what? One thing that gets on top of me, and I will be, is the school emails. Like, God, when they go to school, like literally, and I feel guilty every second of the day because I feel like I get a school email every second of the day. And I'm always like, oh my God, what event are they doing now? Or what things should I be doing? Or have I, like yesterday, for example, like he had to colour in a scarf for a competition. And it was one of those where I felt so awful because I was like, do it now before school. So he was literally at the like breakfast table doing his little scarf, very happy to do it. And he loved what he'd made. But from my perspective, I was like, oh, I should have really spent a lot of time with him doing that. And actually, he did it in like 10 minutes. He was really happy, but I felt so guilty for not seeing it and knowing I had to do it because I had missed it in the lots of comms that had come from school. So yeah, mum guilt doesn't go away. It's constantly there.
Yeah, that is the thing, isn't it? There's just so much to keep on top of, especially with all the school stuff as well, that sometimes stuff does slip, but I think it's just don't be too hard on yourself because you're trying to do so much anyway that it's just impossible to keep on top of it all. And I think something that's really helped me actually is we've got a planner. So I have this like whiteboard, like white clean planner, and we've all got our own little line on it. So any days and anything school related, I always write on there on a Sunday, and then hopefully can keep on top of it and also plan all the meals and everything. I think it's just that's the
That's
thing.
amazing. I
So
need to get
organised.
some of that. I know that's yeah, I'm not there yet. I feel like I'm constantly working on my organization to help with everything, but doing what I can. I think that's the other thing as well. Like I said to my little boy the other day about something, I can't remember what it was, but I was like, look, as long as you just try your best. So I guess sometimes it's like taking the same advice we give
Yeah,
others and be like, I am trying my best. I might not be perfect at it all, but hopefully as long as we're all happy, then it should be fine.
yeah.
Just a bit stressful sometimes when I'm not that organised, but get through it.
So the next question is, how do you know if working is the best thing for your family?
Yeah, I think it's a tricky one, and obviously everyone individually and as a family are different. But from my perspective, and just for us and our family, I think it's important to me because, I had my career that I worked for in the sense that I went to uni later and studied different things because I wanted to do what I was really wanting to do. Um, And actually, family was always such a big priority for me to have a family. I always knew I wanted to have a family. So both of them are really important. Family will always be the most important to me, but it really does like give me sort of, I guess, like a bit of like self-worth and like gives me purpose and it gives me something that's different to my sort of family everyday life. So it almost sometimes gives me a bit of me time.
Yeah,
Like for instance, sounds really silly, but I remember going back to work and being like, oh my God, I get to have a cup of tea and I get to go to the loo by myself. Like just stuff like that in your mat leave year is like almost impossible. Was like it's actually like a luxury. So there's real perks like that. But obviously as well as you get into work and you, like we're saying, get more into kind of being able to manage it all. Never that you are managing it all, but surviving somehow. Like it's nice to, have a little bit that you can do other things than just be.
yeah.
So
I
yeah.
found in because I used to work in a town centre before I started my job where I work with you, and at lunchtime I could go to the shops on my own without a buggy, without a big changing bag, and just like a little handbag, walk around the shops. And I was like, oh, I love this freedom. It feels so good just having that kind of child-free time to myself. It felt like a real luxury.
Oh,
Um,
definitely.
I think
I feel the same actually when I go on my office day now that I actually have a proper handbag. I remember for like a good few years I just didn't use a handbag. I just had like a change bag or a backpack. And then I was like, oh my God, I can actually use a handbag. Like it's like such a silly little thing maybe to some, but it made a difference to how I felt on that one day and it just gave me a little bit of something. Yeah.
yeah. I think the other side for me, having two girls as well, is that I want to show them like mummy's working too, mummy's bringing in money. It's not just daddy going to work. Like, there's obviously nothing wrong with being a stay at home mum at all if it's right for your family. But for us, I wanted to kind of be that role model that they can do anything they want to do, that they can achieve things for themselves. And I want to be a sort of a strong female presence in their lives, and I do try and make sure that I separate. So like you were saying, when you're at home with them. When you're at work, you're focused on work. But I don't think there's anything wrong or anything to feel guilty about if you are going to work, because it sort of shows them that, okay, mummy can do these things too. It's not just daddy. I think setting them up long term,
Yeah, I agree.
hopefully when they're older, they'll really recognize, the amount of, effort and everything that we did to try and make sure that we have a good life. And
Yeah.
you know
And I also think like I've got an all boy house, so I'm the opposite to you, but I still think that that's why it's also really important for me to be almost like you were sort of saying, like a good role model as a late woman to be like, you know what, I do work and I kind of do crack on and can do things myself. I think that's another really good thing to show them as boys, you know. But equally, I do often reflect and think, oh my goodness, like we do a lot, our generation, in the sense that, you know, our mums might not have done what we're doing in the sense of the juggle. So I do almost sometimes feel a bit overwhelmed with what we're trying to do as like women nowadays. And I feel like maybe our sort of millennial generation is maybe a real one where a lot of people are doing it. And I think it's be interesting to see what happens in the future, because it's like we are surviving, but I feel like it is a bit of a survival sometimes.
Definitely.
And it would be nice to have a little bit more calm and chill and freeness in time, if that makes sense, because it does feel like life is flying past because we're always so busy trying to do all these different things.
I think it doesn't help that we are so connected all the time as well. Like, you know, even in our parents' generation, you would go to work and you would be at work, then you would come home and switch off completely from work. Whereas now we still have emails on our phones, we have WhatsApp, you know, we have a group WhatsApp work chat that goes off into the evenings. But then there's even things, you know, like just shopping and just keeping up with everything on the to-do
Yeah,
list, all the school emails that come through. Like none of that would have happened in our when we were little. You know, our parents didn't have phones or emails or anything like that. They would probably get a letter home from school once a week, or you know, you would go to the supermarket on a Saturday and do the food shop, and that would be that time for that. It was a bit more kind of time blocked in sense
yeah,
of like
definitely.
doing one thing at a time, whereas we're always constantly thinking, need to do this, need to do that, quickly do this, quickly just jump on my phone and do this thing, and then sort this thing out over here. And it's just constant everything all the time, isn't it? Which it's
Yeah.
exhausting.
When I feel like it's almost a flip, isn't it? Because I really don't like that point of like how we're like constantly trying to do it all, but then equally it gives a lot of benefit sometimes, like being able to work from home, like after COVID. Like we're quite lucky in our roles now where we are really flexible in that working. So we have some days in the office and then quite a few days at home. And that as a mum has just been amazing, because it just means back to like maximizing time,
Yeah,
that being able to be on Teams calls and being able to just do things more through technology means that we can just be really effective with our time. So that has been amazing. But then the bit that's really stressful is when these sort of alerts and things are coming in and you're like trying to find some socks for the kids, and then you've got these things and it just puts that sort of almost whatever the alert is into your head, and then you're really cluttered all the time, I think, with what you're trying to be like, oh, I'll prioritize this, and you're trying to block your time, but it's not as easily done when there's a lot coming in all the time through
yeah.
technology, really, I guess, like through WhatsApp and emails. And yeah, so
Yeah, I get it's just trying to find a balance really in some way, isn't it? To try and make sure that you don't get on top of it all and it get too much.
yeah, and I do think that's what it's like, putting your phone down is really important. So I'll like, for instance, when I'm doing bedtime and all of that, I'll just kind of put it away. I actually last night lost it because I had put it somewhere and couldn't find it. So at like 8:30, I was like using my husband's phone to try and find my phone. But I guess that was really good, because at points I have been like, oh, you know, they're just, I don't know, playing in their room. I could go check that. But by not knowing where it was, I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
So it was really good discipline, like just put your phone away and just give for the time when you need to not be on it and that sort of thing.
Yeah, something I'm trying to get much better at as well is just making sure when I'm with the children that I am with them and I'm not distracted by other things and not on my phone, and you know, focus on them. And then at other times when perhaps they're happily entertained or when they're in bed, then I can catch up with other bits that I need to just finish off and work it like that really. So that kind of leads me on to the last question, which is all around tips. So, top tips for people who are starting the juggle at the end of the year, perhaps going back from mat leave.
Oh goodness. So obviously I definitely just put my hand up to say I'm not necessarily someone to give amazing tips, because I feel like I'm learning all the time. And I do think that every age changes, you know, from when their first little baby's going back all the way through to like now mine will be starting school in September, my youngest, and things like that. But I guess like if I had to think about like from a work perspective, I think if you're going back from mat leave or just starting a new job or whatever, or even just starting to make changes in the job that you're in, for me, something that I've always been really strongly thinking is important is basically to like really manage other people's expectations of you as a mum. Like, for example, I do 4 days a week, so I don't work one day. And on that day, I purposely don't do emails. I purposely don't
Mm.
communicate. Even if the WhatsApps are coming in, like on a group WhatsApp message, obviously I'll see it, but I won't like respond because I just think it's important for people to understand that when I'm off, that is my day off. Because as soon as I start joining a meeting on that day or doing some emails, I think people might start to be like, oh, she'll pick it up, we'll send it through. So it's managing that, I think, is be really strict with that. And equally with bedtime, like I said earlier, it's just for me, like between sort of 6 and 8, that is bedtime. So I just wouldn't be doing emails or doing any sort of communication that shows that I'm open to working like within that time. And I just hope it manages expectations. And I don't think you should feel bad as like an employee if you've like got to do school drop off or school pick up or something, because do you know what? Like a lot of the world are mum and dad, like parents of some kind. So it's like with responsibilities of children, and you're just looking after your kids. Like that is just not it. You know, in the world we live in now, and with the ways of working that you can dial into things, you can do things differently. Like there shouldn't be that kind of stigma around feeling bad about having to go pick up your kids at 5:30 or something, or be doing the school run at between 8 and 9. Like that's just kind of life. And I just think that we are getting there, but it would be good for that to move on even more in the next years, hopefully, because there is still that feeling where you feel a bit like bad about having to leave to go pick
Yeah,
kids up, and it's a bit annoying that we feel like that.
I think another top tip from me is that don't expect things not to derail, because they will. Like there will be times when your baby is sick at nursery and you have to go and pick them up, and then you have to completely readjust your day. It didn't go as you expected. You have to drop everything at work, look after a sick child. Like these things will happen.
Yeah,
And
and they do in that
there's
first year
times,
especially. Gosh, loads.
yes, exactly. And there's times when you'll have to work and they will be in the room with you for whatever reason, and they're climbing all over you and you're on a Teams call and it's really unprofessional, but that's life and that's what we have to deal with. And I
Yeah.
think don't stress too much about that stuff,
No.
because it happens to everybody, and it's just part of being a parent is that
Yeah.
these things happen. Your children will need you, and yeah, you can't be expected to work at the same level that you are, like that someone is without a child, because you've got all these other responsibilities. So don't be too hard on yourself.
Yeah, you shouldn't like feel bad about like that you've got kids. Like almost be like, oh no, no one can know I've got kids. Like as in you've got children, and you have to pick them up, you have to look after them. If they're unwell, you'll have to go and do that. But I think that's the kind of the main thing, is that kind of managing people's expectations of you is
Yeah,
like almost I do always frame myself as a mum at work, because you know what? That's what I am. But it doesn't mean I'm not good at my job. It just means that I won't be able to do a meeting if you put it in to start at 5:30. Just
yeah,
make it 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock, and then that kind of works. So I feel like that has worked, but it's important to stick to it. I think it's easy sometimes to go into that. Oh, I'll just kind of go along with it, or I don't want to tell people that I've got kids and I've got to pick them up. I think it's just you've got to really be strong with that. And then another tip I think is like, and I'm really not good at this, by the way. It sounds like you're way better, Laura, than I am, but it's one that I'm working on. And I actually heard this like quote or phrase. I can't remember exactly, but it was something along the lines of like preparation like equals success. So it's almost like being organized and planned will mean that you'll be successful, like just in life, I think. So I need to take that as a whole life like, quote. But like with the kids, I think where that comes in and helps me out is like if I'm in the office, I will now plan what I'm wearing and put my bag out, my drink out, my food, everything will be like laid out the night before. Even if I'm doing it at 11:30 at night, I just feel like, no, do it now because that will help me out. And equally for them as well, like I try to make their lunch is the night before, but again, it doesn't always happen. I'll have nights where I'm just too tired. So that kind of preparation, trying to be organized. And actually one that really stresses me out is socks. Like I'm constantly, like the bit that like stresses my daily routine is trying to find their socks. So at the moment I'm in this stage where I'm like, how can I be better at organizing their socks? Because that would make my life easier. Because I'll like have like the trousers, the top, you know, the school uniform or whatever, preschool. And then it's like, where the hell are these matching socks? So I've got two things on my to-do list. It's to buy one of those little things that you put in your washing machine, like a little bag that you put the
Yes.
socks in. So hopefully I won't have like lots of odd pairs. And the second one is I've started putting them in one basket and pairing that, like as a priority, I'll pair the socks up and put them in the basket. The rest of the washing's probably on the spare room bed still, and it definitely is at the moment, but the socks are at least sorted because that is the stress of my life.
Very good. Organising socks
Yeah,
helps with success in the morning for
actually,
school
yeah,
run.
it takes a lot out of the stress of the morning. And then I guess the other thing that I've learned over time is just to give myself more time because, like I say, everything, like with, especially with a toddler, like I'd have like, you know, you'd all be ready, everything went well in the morning, and then you're walking out the door and then they have a tantrum and you're just like, oh my God, we're going to be so
Yeah.
late now for school. What are we
Or they
going to
need
do?
the toilet like just before
Yeah.
you're getting in the car and you have to go back in and then, yeah.
So I
Like,
kind of now just like bank an extra 10 minutes. I probably should bank more, but I always just try to give myself an extra 10. And even if then it's amazing when you've actually done it all, then you find you've got 10 more minutes, then you feel like you're so winning. You're like, oh my God,
yeah,
I'll make a cup of tea, I'll do something. But it's like incredible when you actually are the opposite. But if I'm honest, most days I never am that. I'm always like every minute counts. But yeah, I think just give yourself some more time and be kind to yourself. Like it's not easy. So
no,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
I think that is the key, is being kind to yourself and, yeah, not putting too much pressure on yourself to be everything to everyone. You're only one person and you can only do your best, and hopefully others will see, you know, if you're putting in the effort and doing your best, then that's all you can do. Okay, so thank you very much. I think we'll leave it there. But thanks to everybody who sent in questions around work and motherhood. And thank you so much, Nina, for coming on and chatting to me so openly and honestly about how you've juggled it all from starting back at mat leave to where you are now with schools and everything like that. So thank you, and I will see you soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed that chat, and thank you so much for everybody who sent in questions around the juggle of work and motherhood. Hopefully there were some useful tips in there if you are perhaps returning to work from maternity leave or just looking for better ways to juggle everything if you are already back at work. So look out for the next episode coming next week.